Cool. Thanks, Pepe.
Right, man.
Great intro. All right. So everyone, as Pepe said, our time is extremely valuable. So I'm going to get down to it. So Dale asked me to kick off the day with a 50,000-foot perspective on our industry and where we're going, talking about the technology and the trends. But I think that while we're all asking how is the world going to be different in 5 years' time, how's marketing going to work differently in 10 years' time, I think it's a far more valuable question to ask, how is marketing not going to be different in 10 years' time? What are the timeless truths of our industry? So in this presentation, I'm going to try and marry both of those. I'm going to try and bring that paradox together to say, at the same time as things are moving forward incredibly quickly and technology is completely changing the game, there's also some fundamentals that don't change, and as long as we keep sight of those things, I think that we're not going to become unmoored and we're going to be able to go in a valuable direction. So, advertising, easier to do thanks to technology. We can do it on our phones, we can do it on our laptops. Anyone can start a little marketing business today, but it's increasingly more difficult to stand out. Consumers are swimming in a sea of sameness. All those numbers that we see on digital are also in doubt. What you see here is a real-life click farm. All of those people, you're wondering, how did they get so many followers? How does this have so many views? Why did my ad get so many clicks? This is one of the options available to people in online marketing, and it remains one of the largest white-collar frauds in history, and our industry is part of that. So perhaps it's no wonder then that 4 consultancies rank as the world's biggest marketing companies. So instead of Dentsu, Ogilvy, and BBDO dominating the list, we now see that the world's biggest marketing agencies are Accenture Interactive, PwC Digital Services, IBM iX, Deloitte Digital. Note, not the world's largest digital marketing companies. The world's largest marketing companies are digital. And we're going to reflect a little bit more on that as we go. So, as I said, there's these 3 levels in any trend's perspective. If you want to really get down to it, it's the tech that moves quickly, what might happen, it's the trends, what is happening, and there's the truths that don't change. So I always find it worthwhile to look at the origin story of any industry to find out what is the truth. So here we see Albert Lasker, considered the father of modern advertising. He founded what's today known as FCB. And he introduced us to the idea that big ideas can reframe a product and create new demand. So here we see, for example, one of my favorite of his big ideas. He doubled the sales of oranges in America by saying, at breakfast, don't just eat an orange, have orange juice. So drink an orange. 1 orange is not enough to fill a glass, so suddenly you have to have 2 or 3 oranges. Massively growing the industry by reframing the product with a new story. So that's how the advertising industrial complex was born. Big idea, big media buy leads to transformative results, which is now missing on my slide. So digital has disrupted that. The big idea is not necessarily yours. So Albert Lasker's great reframing oranges to orange juice would probably have appeared on something like Lifehacker today. These ideas don't necessarily come from within an agency. So, you might have seen the Woolworths Water Challenge this week. Woolworths didn't come up with that challenge. It was absolutely brilliant, and there's lots more water being sold by Woolworths. They've co-opted it very successfully, which is excellent. But so the big idea is not yours. The media buy is in the context of fragmenting attention and declining trust, and the results, which should be there, we are probably measuring the wrong things. We're measuring reach, we're measuring awareness, we're measuring likes, and yes, there's a lot of people that are saying, well, how are we measuring impact? We're going to get back to that a little bit later. So the naked truth, as I see it, the big 6 challenges to the ad agency. 1, talent is evaporating. No longer the most inspiring place to be. 2, clients can do it in-house, so they are bringing it in-house. 3, consultancies are encroaching in the space. 4, budgets are shrinking. 5, consumers are ignoring. And number 6, the culture is corporatizing. Take your pick, which is your favorite. So let's look at why that's happening. Content is still cool, but connectivity is king. we've gone through these three big eras in what we would call the first digital industrial revolution. So Web 1.0 was pages. Everyone needed a website. Web 2.0 is profiles. Everyone needed a social media profile and a blog. Web 3.0 is all about things. As the internet moves off screen and into our lives. And we also have these three eras of commerce that have transacted and enabled the digital context. So Web 1.0, e-commerce. Web 2.0, m-commerce, personal buying device that helps us purchase and interact commercially in context. Web 3.0, we haven't got a name for it. I'm calling it a-commerce or automated commerce. So I'm going to unpack that a little bit further. So we've got this big shift. The winners of the attention economy, which was driven by digital, were Google, Facebook, Tencent, and the like. They took us from about 7.5 hours a day of media time to over 15 hours a day media time. We just swim in content from the time we wake up to the time we go to sleep. Our attention is now maxed out. Netflix, according to Reed Hastings, the CEO, their main competitor, is now sleep. So with so much competition for it, attention is now more valuable than ever before, but it's becoming expensive to acquire. In other words, we're paying more money for less impact. The next level, where we're getting to, is persuasion or persuasive systems, where people are turning off content and buying into systems that they can trust. They just go, you know what, I don't care enough about which yogurt brand to buy, just make the decision for me. So algorithmic decision-making is on the rise. I'll share my data if you help me make better choices. This is also why behavioral insights are so important. Pepe talked about stopping smoking. The reality is that no amount of telling people that they're going to stop smoking is going to do the job. We've got to break it down into small behavioral nudges, potentially in the context, asking people to smoke outside, raising the price of cigarettes, making it socially unacceptable. All of these things are little nudges that over time transform behavior, and in the digital context, we can now measure those. And so attribution modeling is going to change from impressions to behaviors. 3, you need to be cognitively kind. You need to, in everything we do, we have to consider the brain and people's scarce attention. You need to be consistent so that people immediately recognize the brand before they have to think about it. Think about Lego. Authentic, naked, and yet surprising, still to gain attention because it's still valuable. So experience design is, for me, the key discipline in this whole field. It's the one that integrates our work. So lastly, if we call this the post-attention era, what's the most valuable thing? If attention was the most important thing before, trust now is absolutely fundamental to this. Why is trust so important? Because once I trust you, I open myself to you. So think about, for example, if social media is getting too much for you and you're migrating back to reading your news on one site, as I'm doing. I'm now paying for news. I trust you to provide news to be a better filter for me. And this is taking over from attention as the scarcest and most valuable commodity in the digital context. So how can you get people to trust you enough to give you access to their most valuable asset, their attention, their time, their energy, money on an annuity basis? That's the question for the next level. So e-commerce, I said I'd unpack it a little bit. So here's the evidence that we're seeing of this. So 1, voice-driven search. You might have seen at Google's big conference last year, the CEO, Sundar Pichai, just speaks to his phone and he says, hey, Google, book me a haircut. And Google takes care of it. It goes, where's the nearest hairdresser? What kind of hair do you have? Dave needs a shave, not a cut. What's your price level? It just does everything. It makes the booking. So increasingly, we're going to go, hey, Google, what car should I buy, as an example? So we're just going to speak into rooms and ask and trust that the decision comes through. 2, we see these Amazon Dash buttons and the like, where we are becoming so brand loyal, because brands are cognitively kind, that we'll just, in the afternoon, if we've got, if we're always ordering Red Bull to get through the deadline, we'll just click that button, poof. We'll have one button. If we aren't good enough at saving, Nedbank is going to give us a button where we push a button and it immediately puts $100 into our savings account. There's going to be all of these dash buttons everywhere where we're just going to interact not with screens, but in the world in in the moment of need. And this week I saw that these smart shoes have launched. So we're not going to want to own things like clothes and shoes and furniture, stuff that we change all the time and that's subject to trends. We're going to want to subscribe. So this shoe will measure my gait, my distance, my run, and I'll subscribe. I'll pay $100 a month or something, and whenever I need a new pair of shoes, it'll say, hey, do you want these pair of shoes? So we're moving from artificial intelligence, AI, to intelligent augmentation, IA. The machine provides suggestions for us, and then we can then choose. So we're empowered. The whole world is our intelligent assistant. So this is the survival of the most connected, and we're seeing extremely surprising results here. So this month I read about Daimler and BMW, two mortal enemies getting together to move from selling us cars to connecting us to a mobility ecosystem. So note, this is not about BMW trying to get a bigger slice of the pie or Mercedes trying to sell you more cars. This is saying there's a much, much larger market for mobility. By the way, I've been on the inside of some of these discussions. It's things like your 6-year-old could get their first BMW. You know, for their 6th birthday, ta-da, you have a BMW subscription because you don't need to drive, you're part of the mobility ecosystem. It's a tricycle today. Anyway, so things are really moving on. So what does this mean for our industry? So advertising in the connected context, I think, is the shift from storytelling, which commands attention, to story making, which puts the world at our behest. So it's the shift from buying ads, which is indirect, you must stop smoking, to guiding decisions in context, an array of nudges when and where we need it. It's a much bigger playing field for marketers. It's called real life. The big ideas now will be how we continuously invent new ways to keep users engaged in our ecosystem and trusting us to keep recommending new experiences. By the way, Jerry Seinfeld said it's a complete misnomer that consumers have attention deficit today. We hear all these myths about the declining attention span. It's absolute rubbish. We've got infinite attention for what entertains us. Think about Xbox, think about the latest series binge. We are just much more discerning, so we'll filter through more options before we decide. So for us, once we've got someone's trust and attention, we have to continuously keep earning it harder than ever. We've got to entertain them, we've got to engage them, we've got to inspire them. If you're in the food business, give them recipes, show them ways to stay healthy. You want to keep them on that subscription diet. If you're in financial services, you've got to hustle on their behalf to make them wealthier. So just a note about this, a little aside. I had a very memorable dinner with the founder of the World Wide Web, or the inventor of the World Wide Web, Sir Tim Berners-Lee, a couple of years ago, and it blew my mind because he said, I'm working on the next version of the internet. And I think that this, and he's released it now, he's released the announcement of it now, and the essence of it is he realizes that our data is what's going to enable this next industrial revolution. Our industry is currently trying to unbundle and tackle the duopoly of Google and Facebook. And we think that breaking them apart is going to be the answer to let more businesses rise. It's not. The reason why we're with Facebook is the main reason we're there is not because of their monopoly, because we can choose to go somewhere else. It's because they have our data. What Tim Berners-Lee and a lot of others who are working on this space are saying is consumers need to own their data, lock it in a blockchain, so I own my social graph, and then I can port it to whatever social network I trust to carry my data. So as an industry, it's in our best interests to mobilize for data protection for consumers. It's in their interests and it's in our interests. Okay, so finally, in conclusion, the trends and truths, what's changing versus what will not change in our context. So these two forces at play as any industry matures, which is commoditization, which is, as technology and skills grow in an industry, production becomes easier and cheaper. And we've seen that with technology. Our production of stories is becoming commoditized, and there's huge price pressure. We're doing more for less, working longer hours, taking shorter breaks, producing more content. And that's commoditization. We are mining stories. We're mining creativity. On the other side of it, you've got this opposing force, which is customization. And that's where we move up the value chain. And essentially, we move from this commodities extraction, making goods, delivering services, where I think most of the industry is, to staging experiences. Now, the highest level of this is where we go from delivering an experience to transforming someone's life. I think Discovery Health in South Africa was an early mover in that. It's not insurance, it's not a product. You buy into this, and the more attention and energy you give to Discovery, the more they will guide you along the process towards well-being, in theory. Now, I think that that's a great way for business to go. We've had this huge shift in our industry over the last 5 years where we've said we need to be purpose-aligned. Everything that we needs to serve a purpose. It needs to be aligned around social good. It needs to be in the good of the consumer. Dove led the way, with real beauty. All of these companies have got a good attached to them, and that's a good thing. But the way that we're playing in this space is that we're telling people to be good. We're not enabling the transformation for them. And I think that the point that was raised earlier is we've lost our seat at the table. We've lost that opportunity to deal with the C-suite and transform the business like Albert Lasker and the early Madman did. We now have the opportunity to reclaim that. So, the bottom line. We've got two choices in the industry, and I think both are viable, but they're very different businesses. We embrace commoditization. We increase production, and there's going to be a business for this, no doubt. You increase production, you embrace commoditization, you go at scale, and you compete at price. And we see a lot of this happening. The other side of it is that we compete on transformative results. And there, more than anything else, more than attention, you've got to value consumer trust. Because the best way to earn trust is to be deserving of that trust in the first place, especially in a context where we are forced to be naked, where we're forced to be transparent. So the bottom line, I think, is let's spend today reclaiming our mojo, looking for every single idea that we can apply to improving our customers' lives, our users' lives. And if we do that, I think that we can change the game, at least to some extent, in the next year. Thank you very much.